In today's episode of the Villains Corner, we'll be going over the lore of the fourth old god to appear in-game, Ny'alotha. Ny'alotha first made his appearance in Cataclysm, back when we only knew the name of two of the other old gods, and he never directly showed up. We never actually got to see what Ny'alotha looked like until Hearthstone created a card of him, which I think was the first time we ever found out what a major lore character looked like from a Hearthstone card instead of the other way around. But according to lore, Ny'alotha has been around since the very beginning with all the other old gods. After the four of them crashed on Azeroth, Y'Shaarj, Cthulhu, Yogg-Saron, and Ny'alotha quickly defeated the elemental lords who controlled the planet previously, and then they fought each other for dominance of the land. Y'Shaarj was the strongest of the four old gods and controlled much of the territory. According to Ny'alotha, Y'Shaarj and Ny'alotha had a climactic battle at the location which would be known as the Broken Shore, where Ny'alotha suffered a major defeat, which ultimately might have helped him survive when the Titans came. When the Titans discovered Azeroth and the Old Gods, which had corrupted the surface, they waged war on the Old Gods, and then thought to end it once things weren't going super well for their Titan Keepers, by just killing the strongest Old God Y'Shaarj, in which case they found out that killing the Old Gods would probably destroy the planet. So they didn't kill any more of the Old Gods and instead went to imprisoning them. And since Y'Shaarj was the biggest and strongest of all the Old Gods, he's the one who got killed before the Titans found out about this little fact about the planet. And if Ny'alotha had won at the Broken Shore, he might have been the biggest and strongest one. It might have been the one that was killed by the Titans instead. And so Ny'alotha was instead the first Old God to be imprisoned, with his prison located halfway between the Well of Eternity and the site which would later become known as Oldham. Since Ny'alotha was the weakest of the Old Gods, he was pretty compact inside his prison, and wasn't able to break free anywhere near as well as Yogg-Saron or Cthulhu. But he was able to work with them in order to corrupt mortal beings through the ages. So, when the Titan Keepers created the dragon aspects and gave 5 dragons some of their powers, the Old Gods collectively worked on corrupting Deathwing and the entire Black Dragon flight. And eventually they were successful, and they put a plan into place that might, maybe, put Deathwing in a position of power to release them all from their prisons, and usher in what they would call the Hour of Twilight, which is just a fancy name for the Old Gods being released from their prisons. Queen Azjar had been trying to bring the Legion to Azeroth using the Well of Eternity, and the forces of Azeroth were working against her to stop this from happening. So, the Old Gods gave Deathwing the knowledge of how to create something known as the Dragon Soul, which he told everyone would be a super powerful artifact strong enough to close the portal in the Well of Eternity and single-handedly stop the war. And the artifact was strong enough to do exactly that, but it was also secretly designed to give Deathwing an edge over all the other dragon aspects, as it required them to give a portion of their power into the Dragon Soul for it to be created. So, after Deathwing tricked all of the aspects into giving a portion of their power to the artifact, he then immediately betrayed everyone and killed most of the Blue Dragonflight. He also killed swarms of demons and night elves. Deathwing just kind of went on a killing spree and just destroyed so many things and completely rendered the other aspects powerless, as he was just able to keep them frozen in place where they couldn't move or speak. Eventually, one of the red dragons, named Straws, was able to break Deathwing's concentration long enough for the other dragons to counterattack, causing Deathwing to go into retreat along with the Dragon Soul. Then, Straws, Broxigar, and Malfurion were able to sneak in and steal the artifact from Deathwing, and bring it to the Well of Eternity in order to try and invert the demon portal, to suck all of the demons out of Azeroth. And this plan did work, but it worked so well that it kind of destroyed the Well of Eternity, and caused the planet to break apart in the Sundering. But before the Dragon Soul could fall into the Well of Eternity as well, the bronze dragon Nozdormu grabbed the artifact and then brought it into the future, where it then returned moments later and was seized by Malfurion, who placed a spell on it, along with 4 other aspects that made it so that Deathwing could no longer use it, and they hid it from him, where he wouldn't be able to find it for another 10,000 years. And with the world breaking apart due to the Sundering, the city of the Night Elves was slowly sinking into the ocean, and Queen Azjar tried her best to create a force field around the city to keep all the water out. But eventually, as the pressure of the ocean got too much to handle, she wasn't able to hold the force field for very much longer, and it cracked, flooding the city and would have killed everyone if it wasn't for Ny'alotha's intervention. Ny'alotha sent a fish to Queen Azjar as a vessel to talk to her, and proposed a bargain with her that, if she would agree to work for him, he would give her enough power to save her and her people. Queen Azjar immediately rejects this offer, and then offers a counter offer where she'll agree to work with him, but not for him, in exchange for that exact same power. Ny'alotha begrudgingly agreed to these terms, surprisingly, and turned Queen Azshara and her people into the Naga, as well as giving Queen Azshara herself a lot of extra old god powers. Sometime later, when the roots of the World Tree Andrasil reached Yogg-Saron's prison, it allowed entrance into the Emerald Dream by all of the old gods, including Ny'alotha, where he planted a piece of himself in there which later became known as Il'gynoth. Although Ny'alotha wouldn't do much with the Emerald Dream until later, because after the defeat of the Lich King, Ny'alotha thought the world was sufficiently weak enough for him to make his move and enact the Hour of Twilight again. So Ny'alotha reached out to all of his minions and instructed them to do a coordinated attack effort, starting with Deathwing, who had gone through a lot since his time during the War of the Ancients, and the whole Dragon Soul fiasco. Ny'alotha instructed his minions to attach Elementium plates to Deathwing in Deepholm, and also infused Deathwing with lots of his powers, which Deathwing wasn't really able to handle as it twisted his body into all kinds of tentacly shapes underneath. So the metal plates were basically there to hold his body together, as it was constantly breaking apart. Then, when Deathwing exploded from Deepholm, he flew around Azeroth causing all kinds of natural disasters to occur, which was a great distraction for the other 3 plans Ny'alotha had cooked up. Ny'alotha also called on all of the Elemental Lords to assist him, but only Al'Akir and Ragnaros embraced his command. The other 2 did not and refused to serve him. In exchange for helping Ny'alotha, he had promised to release Al'Akir and Ragnaros from their prisons in the Elemental Planes, and he also promised Deathwing control over the rest of the world and the elimination of the other dragon aspects. But he had no plans on actually giving this to Deathwing, and planned on killing him as soon as he was done with his task. Since Neptulon refused Ny'alotha's call, he also called upon Queen Azshara in order to capture him, because if he had control of Neptulon, he can control the world's oceans and seas, cutting off all sea travel between Azeroth's continents. So his 3 plans were to send the Naga to Vashj'ir to capture Neptulon, so that they could control the world's oceans, send Ragnaros to Mount Hyjal to burn the World Tree, which would cause irrecoverable damage to the planet, and his last plan was to attack the Forge of Origination in Uldum, so that he could claim the Forge of Origination for himself. Now, the Forge of Origination is an incredibly powerful Titan-created device, which was basically installed as a reset button for the planet, where it had the ability to destroy all life on Azeroth, just in case the surface got corrupted or something, which would have been a very convenient tool for Ny'alotha to gain control of. And Ny'alotha only needed one of his plans to succeed in order to usher in the Hour of Twilight, and with all of them going on simultaneously, along with Deathwing being a great distraction, there was no way he wouldn't succeed. Except for the fact that literally every single one of his plans was stopped. And Ny'alotha was very surprised that all of his minions were thwarted at every turn. And in fact, Ragnaros and Al'Akir were even killed in the Elemental Planes, so he lost 2 of his strongest minions. So Ny'alotha gave Deathwing the rest of his strongest remaining minions, including Yorsaj and Warlord Zanas, and charged them with taking the Wormrest Temple. Unfortunately, both of his generals were killed, and the mortal races had somehow acquired the Dragon Soul, which was used by the Orc Thrall to shoot a hole through Deathwing's chest. As it turns out, they had gone back in time to that point where the Dragon Soul had disappeared for a few moments, and then brought it to the present. So Deathwing ran to Deepholm to enact the final backup plan, which was basically to tear the planet apart. However, before he could get there, a group of adventurers had jumped on his back and tore his Elementium plates off, causing his body to basically fall apart in the sky. So Ny'alotha had to give him extra power, which caused his body to turn into a completely tentacly monster and no longer really resembled the form of a dragon. But Thrall had chased him down and was able to use the Dragon Soul to finish him off. So with Deathwing and all of his best minions dead, Ny'alotha was kind of stuck with only 2 things left: his control of Azshara and the Naga, and his slight control over the Emerald Dream thanks to Il'gynoth. So when the Burning Legion launched a full-scale invasion of Azeroth again, Ny'alotha sent his minion Xavius to set forth the Emerald Nightmare, as it allowed them to ever so slowly loosen the prison of Ny'alotha while everyone was busy, until a group of adventurers was able to go into the Emerald Nightmare, free Malfurion, and kill Il'gynoth and Xavius, which kinda put an end to those plans for now. After the Legion is defeated and Sargeras stabs a sword into the planet, a Shadow Priest who was wielding the blade called Ny'alotha used the remaining power of the blade in order to stop the corruption from the sword of Sargeras. And then, sometime later, the soul of Ny'alotha made a bargain with Ny'alotha to bring him Azeroth's champion in exchange for being freed from his control. So Ny'alotha called out to the Shadow Priest champion and told him that the Naga were looking for 3 relics to perform a ritual, which would bring about a storm that would wipe out all non-believers on the planet, and that she knew exactly how to stop them. She also brings up the fact that she helped you defeat the Legion, as kind of a bargaining chip in order to trust her, which works incredibly well. So the Shadow Priest goes out and collects the 3 artifacts for her, and then she performs a ritual which brings Ny'alotha to their location. Ny'alotha then frees Ny'alotha from the blade, and then bestows a gift upon the adventurer. And then later on, a Horde force goes into the Crucible of Storms and kills Unat in order to recover these 3 artifacts, and they find Ny'alotha as well, which compels whoever picks it up to bring it to their war chief. The blade then eventually leads forces of Alliance and Horde to the city of Nazjatar, where Queen Azshara is able to trap them in her city, and then tricks a group of adventurers into using their Heart of Azeroth to open the last prison, which would allow Ny'alotha to finally escape. Although they do manage to kill Queen Azshara in the process, whose body is taken away by Ny'alotha and she is revived and placed in a prison. With Ny'alotha finally free, he goes about trying to reclaim the Forge of Origination so that he can use its power to kill everyone, as well as the Engine of Ny'alotha, located in Pandaria. Since the Forge of Origination can be used to kill all life on Azeroth, that's kind of a big deal, since, remember, it was originally meant as a reset button to the planet. And the Engine of Ny'alotha can be used to create things, even life itself, so its power is nearly limitless in its potential uses. Wrathion, one of Deathwing's sons who was not corrupted by the old gods, with the help of adventurers, the Keeper Ra, and the Titan Construct Mother, is able to stop Ny'alotha from taking control of these 2 Titan facilities. Mother is a Titan construct who was created for the sole purpose of researching the old gods and finding a way to remove them from the planet, and is able to come up with a plan that might be able to kill Ny'alotha, or at the very least, severely weaken him to the point where he can be contained again. You see, Mother spent so many years researching the old gods that she was able to accidentally create one of her own, and is probably the premier old god expert in the Warcraft universe, as she was like a supercomputer left behind by the Titans to focus on a single objective, and when she never heard back from the Titans, she just kept working on it to a fanatical but very accurate degree. And because of this, she was able to find a way to combine the powers of the Forge of Origination through the Engine of Ny'alotha to create a super weapon that would act like a scalpel to remove Ny'alotha from the planet. Something which even impressed the Titan Keeper Ra, who created these 2 devices. So a group of adventurers go into the sleeping city of Ny'alotha to fight Ny'alotha, so they can get close enough to use the super weapon to hopefully kill him. But during their adventures, they run across Queen Azshara, who's currently being tortured in a prison next to the blade Ny'alotha. Once adventurers free Azshara, she tells everyone that the blade is the only way to contain Ny'alotha, and that she had been planning on stabbing it into him the entire time, but she got killed right before she was able to do it. So with Ny'alotha in hand, they make their way to Ny'alotha's core, and Wrathion uses the Black Blade to cut a path open to the heart of Ny'alotha, where, after a lengthy battle, they manage to weaken Ny'alotha enough to the point where the holder of the Heart of Azeroth is able to channel the energies of the engine and forge directly into Ny'alotha's weakest point, killing him for the time being. And that brings us to the end of the story of Ny'alotha. Whether he actually dies or not is kind of up in the air, as super powerful beings don't really stay dead in Warcraft lore. But for the time being, he is defeated and probably won't show up anytime soon in the future. Alright, and that's the Villain's Corner on Ny'alotha. If you enjoyed the video, I'd highly suggest watching the playlist on all the other ones. These videos take months to make at a time, so it would really help out if they got more views. As always, I'd like to thank Rachel for doing the drawings in this video. If you like her artwork, I'll have links to her website and Twitter down in the video description.